everybody, to the Building Aaronsburg podcast. I'm Thomas Aaronsburg,
And I'm Catherine Aaronsburg.
and today we're going to talk about something that I bring up in my finance lessons with my students at the school that I teach.
Not Cushman. We're not talking about Cushman
Not
today.
talking about the Cushman. It was not a big hit among
You guys don't want to hear about the Cushman.
our fan base. It's one of these lessons that I talk about when I'm trying to get the kids to think about their future, and we talk about how they think, and they don't really know because they have to self-examine themselves. But
Ooh, we love that on this podcast.
yeah,
We love a little self-examination.
how they think they're going to spend money in the future, specifically when it comes to something like your children. Because what I'm having them self-reflect on is, right, for them, currently, their parents are buying them things and not buying them things, and they are starting to maybe look around and see,
notice what other people have
right,
and don't have.
what do the other kids have? What don't I have that they have? What do I have that they don't have? And
do you think people do that, really, kids at that age? I'm not sure.
I don't think it's a purposeful thing.
I'm not sure. I would have considered, now we both went to a private high school, so granted, we were not surrounded by a lot of very needy people. Like, that just was a matter of fact. I knew, even then, that I was a privileged child, that I was able to go to a private high school and private grade
But
school
there
and
are
all
probably
that.
certain kids that dressed in the trendiest clothes.
So I
and the
feel like I
newest-
understood it going upward. Like,
Right.
I always felt like I was on the lower end of those things. I was never the trendy one. I was never the one with the new clothes. I mean, the way that I shop now, and well, I guess we'll get into it. The way I shop now is the way I shopped then. My mom would shop for me at Goodwill, and we never went to the mall, ever. My mother never shopped at a mall, ever, and I don't do it either.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that informed how I do things with my own kids and with myself as an adult. But all that being said, I was able to identify the kids who had more than me, but I don't think that I ever really thought about the ones who had less than me. And maybe that's a total me thing. Maybe that's a lot of different people's things. I wasn't great at looking around and noticing that anyone was anything but
they had less.
more.
Right. It's easy to see, but I think that's human nature. I think it's easier to see when you don't have what other people have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's harder to recognize when you do have something that other people don't have. By the very statement, we both went to private school.
Yeah. And that's not to say that I wish that I had the stuff that the other people had. It wasn't that. It was just I knew it. It was just a matter of
right, but fundamentally you had a private education. There's a lot of people that do not have the ability to have that. And I don't know if you necessarily took it for granted. But it's probably not something you
I took it for granted a lot more when I was a little kid. When I got to college, I didn't anymore.
Right.
Suddenly, for whatever reason, I really snapped into understanding.
Well, because that was the first public school that you went to.
It was the first public school I'd ever been to, and I also was surrounded by people. I was just listening. I was sitting in class listening to people tell stories, and my friends at lunch or whatever, and they were just talking. I mean, this wasn't like telling our life story or something, but it became very obvious that a large portion of the people that I hung around were first generation college attendees.
Right.
And would be the first person in their family to graduate from college. So they were a big deal. It was a really big deal. And I thought,
it was not a big deal for you.
It was expected of me.
Right.
Which is different than it being this, great congratulatory thing. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to go to college.
Right.
And the same thing felt when we graduated from high school. It's like you look around at your classmates like, where are you going to college? Where are you going to college?
Yeah, it's just understood. Everyone
you just
that's
ask
leaving
everybody
the school
where they're
going to college.
Yeah, you just ask everybody where they're going to college. It never occurred to me that some people didn't go to college. And so it took me getting to college and being surrounded by people who either grew up with less than or were, first generation college attendees or whatever, to realize how privileged of a life I'd really led all that time. And I was really appreciative for it. It was a nice realization, honestly.
Yeah.
To really understand. I think that was probably the beginning of my journey of a little more of the self-analytical.
Right. So you'd say you were not like that in high school, though, that you would look around and say, I have these things that other people don't have, and
I don't think so. I mean, high school was a long time ago. Like a real long time ago. So I don't exactly remember. But I do think that, back to what your original statement was and the purpose of all of this, I think that our parents are always our first teachers for everything. Financial things, religious things, political things, manners, discipline. All those things are the things that your parents teach you day in and day out, and so not something you
Right.
learn in class. And so they become such a part of you that you don't even realize, and you don't second guess them, and you don't think twice about them. And so, the kids that you're teaching in
Well, and you
class,
probably don't even realize that there is another way.
yeah, and you
That's
don't.
the only way that you know.
It's similar to the example we talked about in a previous podcast where the girl's cooking her first Thanksgiving dinner. The whole family's coming over. She cuts the turkey in half, sticks it in the oven. Someone asks her why she cut the turkey in half. Because my mom did it. She asked the mom why the mom did it. Because my grandmother, because my mom did it.
Yeah.
Then the grandmother says my oven wasn't big enough and that's why I cut it in half. Like, we just do things because our family did them and that's how we learned, and we don't
Sure.
really ever second guess. And so I think what I would like to put out there, especially with what we're talking about today, which is the financial stuff, is so ingrained in us from a young age, how we treat money, that of course we end up, now we're talking today about specifically, I think, kids and
Yeah.
how we're financially spending on our kids, and the choice that we make to say, the separation between I had it, so my kids need it, or I didn't have it, and so my kids don't know. How do we say it?
Yeah, that's right. So I break it up into two categories for the students. I said, as you look around, you look at some basic stuff. The clothes is an obvious example, but a lot of them are sophomores, so they're turning 16. Do you get a car when you turn 16? Because I didn't get one.
Me neither.
A lot of my friends got one, so it's like that was kind of a big thing. And
By the
so,
way, the school that you teach at, they keep buying more and more land to keep putting more and more cars because
Right.
every kid is driving a car. That did not happen when we were
no,
there.
it did not.
So it wasn't even a matter of you and I didn't drive a car.
Sure.
I think that it was a majority kids did not, or at least a much larger amount of kids drive cars to school now
Than
drove them when we were
I
in high
agree.
school. And the school is not bigger. The school is
No.
actually smaller than it
Right.
was when we went there.
Right.
The number of cars per capita at your school is way
going up.
higher
It's
than it
going up
was.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So you're either in the have or the have-nots category for that.
Which is all relative, of course.
Of course. If you're in the haves category, you either look at things one of two ways. I have it. It's awesome that I have it. I want my kids to have it. I have it. I felt like I was a spoiled brat. I don't think my kids should have it.
Well, on the other side, I didn't have it, so my kids don't need it, or I didn't have it and I want my kids to have it.
Right. So
You can go.
you're in one
go
of two
on-
categories, and then within that category, you have one or two options
Mhm.
to go from. So, that's kind of what I'm trying to get them to think about.
Mhm.
And really, for some of them, maybe you're a have in some ways and you're a have not in some
Sure.
other ways.
Sure.
Because,
Sure.
like you're saying, your parents are your teachers. They're teaching you, or they're telling you, and maybe subconsciously, these are important ways to spend your money, and these are not important ways
And
to
I
spend
think
your
that
money.
I think we also, in a lot of ways, in without realizing we're doing it, we push off our
Inadequacies.
inadequacies to our children,
Sure.
like just mentally. And so the things that we worry about or whatever, maybe they worry about too. So maybe, we're talking about money and finances here, but maybe they feel socially inadequate, or they feel,
Right.
I feel like we always use clothes and things as being this such a drive. And I guess primarily that is what we're talking about, is things, right?
Right.
And maybe not. It could be traveling and experiences, and
Sure.
which isn't a
Yeah.
thing.
How many kids go to Disney and
Right, which is a huge thing right
Right.
now. How many kids did you even know that went to Disney when we were
a
kids?
handful, maybe.
Maybe.
A handful.
Like, you don't, now people go multiple times a year
Right.
with
I think it's like the car thing. It's just I don't know that it's necessarily becoming more affordable, but people are choosing to afford it
it is absolutely
for
not
their
affordable.
children or for their families, whatever. I think that what they're doing in doing that is they're teaching their children that is an important thing to us,
Right.
and that's important that we spend our money that way.
Absolutely, sure. And we are not here to say what is important and what's not.
Right.
I think the bigger question is always, and I feel like we hit this home every single time, and that becomes the theme of all the shows, is just having that just step back from everything for a half a second and look at what everything you're doing, What is that saying to your kids? What is that going to say to the future? Like big picture. As a parent, your job is to be big picture person.
Right.
That is your job. And it's
Well,
really hard to see the forest for the trees
It's really
sometimes.
both, though. You're the big person, the big picture person, and you have to be the day by day.
Ugh, you guys,
manager person.
parenting is exhausting. Being a parent and an adult is exhausting, but it's our job. I mean, that's why we have kids. Is at least that's how I view my job as a parent. Is that I want to raise good adults. I'm raising adults,
Right.
and so you know, my parents. I think our parents raised us with similar financial. I don't know,
Experiences.
conservative behaviors, I guess.
Yeah.
We both come from very big families, and I think there's not always a lot of money to go around. It'd be a rare instance for, you know, 7 kids and 6 kids respectively here, to have a parent or group, you know, a couple parents that have a ton of money to spread between 7 kids and put them into Catholic schools and, you know,
Right.
all these different things that we were able to experience. So they certainly sacrificed in order to give us the life
Sure.
that they wanted for us. And nowadays, you've been on the school board before, you see that there are people who are in a Mardi Gras society or they are going to
Yeah.
Disney,
And then
posting their pictures
they're
on Facebook,
struggling to pay the tuition.
and they're not paying their tuition.
Right.
So, you know, we don't
But you
talk.
know, the parents, I mean, that's what the parents are doing, but the kids don't see that happening.
But that's what's happening is the kids are all they see is I'm going to a private school, we're going to Disney, you know, we're doing all these things. When I was a kid, I was in a private school, but also we were camping every summer and we were driving for 2 weeks in our car, you know.
Yeah.
And parents were saving kind of a thing. Credit has become the great equalizer.
Yeah.
And I think generally we don't talk about money enough for everyone to understand where people stand with money. Do you know what I mean? I think everyone looks around at the people who live on their street and think, oh, we all live in this neighborhood.
We all must make the same amount of money,
right,
and spend it the same way.
Right. And you see a boat in somebody's driveway and no one ever they look across and go, oh my gosh, what does Bob do for a living that he can afford that?
Right.
Bob is up to his nose in debt is the problem.
Sure.
But what is that teaching our kids? What are you showing our kids about healthy spending habits? Because, of course, Americans work ourselves to death. We really do.
We do.
We don't take vacations. And so, although I think that's flipping at this point. I think people take a lot of vacations now.
Well, I think because COVID's, kind of opened people's eyes.
Sure.
You know, like, what am I? Yeah, like, what am I doing? Why am I breaking my neck?
But all that being said, that's all about a balance, right?
Sure.
And so, since it's our job as parents to be able to teach our kids, be their first teachers for everything.
Right.
We are their first financial teachers. And if we're not financially knowledgeable, then we need to educate ourselves and not just do what our parents did because we were educated by our parents. And maybe we need to take a step back and go, was that how we should have been doing things?
That's kind of where where I take that finance lesson is that I always tell them there's not a right or wrong way for any of this stuff. It's just, these are decisions that I make, and this is what I do, and this is what your parents do, and this is what Johnny's parents do. But none of them are right or wrong necessarily. Just like you have to make priorities, and within that, these are kind of decisions that you're going to have to make along the way.
But in the same way, don't look around and see what everybody else is doing and go, that's what I should do too, because everyone's circumstance is different. You don't know how many grandparents are paying for their kids to go to a school. Right. You don't know if they have an inheritance or if they're just in debt crazy or who knows? I mean, who even knows? It doesn't matter. Stay in your lane, keep your blinders on, you do you, and do what is best for your children because you are their parent and it is your job to be the teacher of finances and, you know, all the other things that, you know, are under the responsibility of a parent, which is a lot. But again, reevaluating what you learned from your parents and going, is it how I should do things? Should, you know, let's say my parents had separate checking accounts their whole lives and they each had a job and they had separate checking accounts. And now I get married and go, well, that's how my parents did it.
Right. That's the right way to do it.
That's how we should do it.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. Right. Is that the right way to do it? Ask some questions. And maybe not even from them. Maybe ask them. Maybe that is, you go both ways.
Why did you do it?
Why did you do it that way? And maybe there was some reason they did it that way. There was like some tax setup or who knows.
Right.
And you saw it happening in your own house and knew it existed. but you didn't know why, and then you get married and you do it too. Why? And then your kids see that and it travels down. It, trickles down, and who knows why we did it. So if we could all just reevaluate the different things. I mean, we've talked about plenty of the things before that, my mom had hard and fast rules about piercing ears and things like that.
Sure.
And I just stopped and thought, I mean, is that important to me for my kid to not have her ears pierced till she's 13? How important is that to me? A number. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so when I felt like she was ready, that's when she was able to pierce her ears.
Okay.
End of that.
So let's talk some specific financial examples of things that we've done.
Okay.
I guess we'll start with maybe things that we didn't have that we feel like our kids should have.
Okay.
Can you think of any good examples there? I can think of one.
Okay.
Because as we sit in this room with all of our podcasting equipment, it's sitting right next to our son's
drum set,
$250 drum set,
which is not a very expensive drum set.
It's not super expensive, but I know that my parents would not have spent that much money on one single item.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money, but
we saw that he was very interested.
He's very interested. He's very good at it.
Yeah.
He loves to play it, and I think the other ones play on it too.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as him, and it's one of those things to me. And I'll say this. I mean, like you said, we had 7 kids. It's hard to buy one $250
one kid that's interested
in
drums. Yeah.
But I think if there was something that they knew that we all would have been interested in, they probably would have. One thing that does stick out in my mind is they did buy us a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Now it wasn't $250. It was probably like a $100 keyboard from Walmart or whatever.
Yeah.
We played that thing
to death,
nonstop. Yeah,
sure.
We learned. I mean, that's really where we learned how to play. A lot of us play musical instruments. That's where it all started for a lot of us.
I will admit, I was up for the drum set because it's electronic and I can't hear it. So there was a compromise there.
Yeah.
But I was for the drum set because it's not a game. Like it's like a, game console or something.
Right.
If you'd come to me and said, yes, I'm one of those, I'm a big Gary Vee follower. And anybody who follows Gary Vee knows that he is all for some esports. And if your kid wants to sit in the basement and play games all day and just get really good, that could be their skill and they can hone it. I'm a thumbs down on that. Like, yeah. I cannot get on board with that. Sorry, everybody. So, I would much rather him be honing a musical skill,
right,
than to be playing a game, a console game. So if you had told me, well, he's really good at playing Mario Brothers or whatever, I don't even know what names of games are, I would not have been on board. So I feel like this could hone, it was kind of a lot of different things put together. He is very talented at it. And of course I wanted him to hone that skill, but it's also keeping him busy doing something other than playing a video game.
Yeah.
Something that's keeping his mind sharp.
It's constructive, as my dad would always say, go find something constructive to do.
Yeah. That's what
my
parents would say that
it's
too.
Constructive.
Whoever knew what constructive meant.
Well, I always took it like you need to go build something.
Oh.
I don't know why.
You actually took it as construction.
Yes. Okay, I'll go outside and I'll take something apart and I'll put it back together.
That's interesting you say that about building something. I'm not sure I ever would have thought about when they said to go do something constructive. I think to me it always meant don't mess anything up. Find something to do by yourself that doesn't involve a parent that you can do quietly in a corner.
Yeah, but a video game does that.
Sure, that's true. But my parents did
games,
not
probably.
have those. And see, that's another thing that maybe because they didn't let us have them, then I'm immediately kind of
turned off to them.
Yeah, because you had them when you were a kid.
Yeah, we did.
So you're not turned.
And I think it was one of those things. At Christmas, this was the everybody gift.
Mm-hmm.
A Super Nintendo.
I just think the bigger picture, which is, I mean, I'm 100% right when it comes to video game stuff. These kids fight over them.
They do.
They argue about them, and there's no again constructive argument happening here. It's not
right. You're yelling because they cheated.
Yes.
Or your controller analog didn't work.
Whatever. It's all stupid. It's all. I mean, I hate video games with every fiber of my being, and I would keep them 100% out of the house. But I got people knocking on every corner trying to make sure they get some electronics. Like we're abusing the kids because they don't have electronics.
I like video games. I mean, I grew up playing them. So,
but I will say you're not a big gamer. It's not like you're like
I'm
playing.
Not.
You were never one of those like headphones on.
Yeah, I
Halo,
never was. Right.
That type. Thank goodness.
My brothers were though.
They're not anymore, though. We're talking about, look, there's a current situation, grown men, 40-year-old men down in their basements playing Halo.
Yeah.
While
I could see that.
People are raising babies upstairs. I can't with all that stuff.
Yeah.
Cannot do it. Sorry. I shouldn't say sorry. I'm not sorry. That's ridiculous. If you're playing 8 hours a day on your video game and you have children and a spouse, and
you got other things.
You got other things.
Other more constructive things to do.
I was just talking today about how we spend more time with our kids than I think any of our parents ever spent with us. I think that's kind of more of a modern day thing.
Yeah,
I think most parents these days probably spend more time with their kids, and not in like a helicoptery way.
Right, like it
probably seems like helicoptery to our parents. I don't know.
I just feel like, the time that I'm spending with our kids, I always feel like we're doing stuff.
Yeah, they're learning stuff, or we're doing something constructive. We spent our whole lives. They told us to go do something constructive as kids, and doggone it, we sure are.
Yeah, I feel like I play with the kids a lot.
Yeah, you do. You're really good at that.
Together.
You have been listening to music with the kids ever since they were babies. But yeah, you were really good at that with the kids. Even when they were little babies, you would sit on the computer and play solitaire and hold them as little infants.
Yeah.
And they would listen to music with you. I really do think that's probably what stemmed there.
That's why they love music. Yeah. I really do think that's why they love music.
Yeah, I do too.
But I love music. Like, I've always listened to music. Like I told you that.
Who doesn't listen to music, though?
No, but I had the radio on my bed. You've heard that story.
Yeah, you threw it on your brother's back.
So, like, no one else had that. I was the only one that had a radio and a stereo in the room.
Yeah.
And it sat up there on my bed, so.
So, beyond the things that you give your kids and don't give your kids, because, again, my mom was shopping at Goodwill. She was shopping at consignment shops. The most expensive or retail place that my mom would ever go is there used to be a place in Mobile called Solo, because the prices were so low.
Oh, wow. I was thinking it was an acronym for something.
No, and I think it was spelled SOLO. I don't think that there was a W. Yeah, it wasn't like so low. It was so low, but it was like the prices were so low. Anyway.
Wow.
It closed a long time ago. It was over where the current Michael's is now, I believe. That's the area, like the mall area.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those outside Springdale Mall area places. And it was one of those, it was like a Marshall's or a TJ Maxx, but it was all clothes. There may have been a few peripheral like accessories and things, but for the most part, as far as I can remember, that place was racks and racks and racks of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And man, if we were going shopping with my mom at the retail store, which was Solo, you were in for a day. That was going to be.
You were going to put your hands on every article of clothing.
She was going to put her hands on every piece of clothing. It was like shopping at a dirt cheap. You know what that's like?
Yeah.
So many racks of clothing. Can you imagine bringing children into a dirt cheap?
I could not.
Several of them.
We're like clothes. Like
to buy clothes, yes.
Not even shoes or.
I'm sure there were shoes there too, but like we're like laying underneath the racks, like most boring.
Get me out of here.
I mean, it was a day. When we went shopping, we were going to go to Solo and shop all morning, and then we were going to go to Captain D's for lunch.
Wow.
Or Burger King. When you went shopping, and I can tell you, it didn't happen that often. It didn't happen that often. It happened so few times that I can distinctly remember, going and eating these places. Yeah. And so that's probably how she lured us in there. Like, we're going to go to Solo, and then we're going to go out to eat for lunch. And you're like, yes, like we never do
Burger
that.
King.
That is where I learned the trick of when you go to a fast food restaurant, you get the drinks with no ice in them because they give you more soda. Yeah. if you guys, serious talk right now. We're going from laughy to serious talk. We still do it to this day with our kids. So they're learning the trick too, generationally. If you go to a fast food restaurant and you're going through drive-thru, of course you're picking it up to go. Normally the way that fast food restaurants work, at least these days, it didn't used to be this way. They would just press the button back in the day for ice and then for drink. Now they have like a button they can press and it does it all automatically.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I
did.
It
is the ice in the fountain drink. But if you order it without ice, it comes out of the fountain drink already cold.
Yeah.
And so then you get more drink because they have to manually push the button for it to fill the cup all the way up instead of diluting it with ice / wasting that amount of space that you could have been filling it with drink. And so, of course, my mom this was back when it probably was before the years of Supersize, but you certainly you could get a very large drink to go with your
Thirst Buster.
Yeah, you get a giant You guys, Thirstbusters were at Circle K.
Yeah, I remember.
My dad used to drink coffee out of those. That was his coffee in the morning. Anyway, back to the fountain drink. You would get these giant drinks, and then my mom would ask for 4 extra cups, however many like kids cups, and then she would distribute it.
Yeah.
One big drink.
Pretty smart.
You guys, these are the big family tricks that we learned financially. So, anyway, back to the original subject at hand here, which is it wasn't just the clothes and the things that you had or didn't have. It was also things like investing, making money at all. Like, I mean, we were picking up aluminum cans as kids and turning them in for money.
Right.
I was going to the recycle center with my aunt after we had some metal pipe and things to take to turn in to get money. So like it was understanding finances and money from a lot of different angles. And it was also going, okay, I'm making all of this money and doing all these things to make money, but we're not spending it on extravagant things.
Right.
You're 10 years old and you have a bank account and you want those Deion Sanders tennis shoes? Oh, yes, people. Deion Sanders, 1992, came out with a pair. I was in 5th grade. Came out with a pair of Nike tennis shoes. It was like these days Air Jordans.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Well, Jordans were popular back then too.
They were.
But
I'd never heard of Jordans back. I knew who Michael Jordan was.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the tennis
you didn't play
shoes.
basketball. I wonder who Deion Sanders. He played football and baseball.
Yeah.
I don't know how he was marketing to you.
Everybody had I don't know, and the girls were wearing them too. It wasn't just boys,
Yeah, that
which I
must have
guess
been.
Air Jordans are worn by boys too. I mean, girls too, right?
Yeah, but
Now?
I think that they're targeted
More toward boys.
at. I mean, definitely back then it would have been boys playing basketball. I mean, that's what they.
Yeah.
Now they're more people wear them sort of like as designer shoes almost. They
You
wear
guys-
them out.
Let's just say this. In 1992, I was in 5th grade, and this was the dawn of the Nike Air Pocket in the heel of the
Yes.
shoe. I think all the people probably listening to this podcast are aware of this. I think we don't have an
I
audience
know.
that's all that young.
I remember the Air Pocket shoes.
But those started then in the 90s. They did not exist before that. Before they were just a foam heel.
Right.
Then these Nike Airs, you
Yep.
guys, the Nike Air
Yep.
did not exist before 1990-ish, 92-ish. So I wanted a pair of those shoes so bad, and I had money to buy them. They
Yeah.
were $110, as I remember. And I don't know if my mom would remember this. I'll have to ask her. I know she'll DM me after she listens to this podcast episode. But I would love to know what she was thinking, because she allowed me to go to the bank, pull out my money, and go and buy those shoes. And then after I bought them from Dillard's, I believe, I cried and took them back. Because I was like, I know how much money, I know how hard I worked to earn that 110
Right.
plus tax, whatever it was, $125. And I cannot, these are tennis shoes I put on my feet. This is
Right, they're gonna
ridiculous.
get dirty.
Even at the age of 10, I was
Yeah.
like, this is insanity. So I took them back. And I'm sure she was probably like, whew. Because my mom was not the type of mom who was ever like, okay, it's your money.
Right.
Do with it what you want. Because I know your parents were like that. If
Yeah.
you earned money, it was yours. And of course it's my money. I can do with it whatever I want.
Sure.
But she was going to strongly, strongly advise you not to. I don't
Mhm.
remember her not advising me anyway. But somehow I still got the money because all my money was in a bank. I never
Yeah.
kept it in a
It
wallet
wasn't.
anywhere.
Yeah. For me, it was. It was in my sock drawer. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
right. So that's another thing too that parents teach. Do you have your money in a sock drawer? Do you have it in a wallet somewhere? Do you
Right.
have it in an account? Is it invested? I mean, there's kids. I think that you have come home and told me that there are kids that you have taught that have bought Apple stock.
Well, they didn't buy it. Like their parents or grandparents or
yes,
whoever
but
had
you
bought
see,
it for 'em.
that's their parents are teaching. The rest of your
Right.
class is clueless. They're like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Apple stock? Like we know who Apple is." But meanwhile, you have parents who are teaching their kids to buy Apple stock.
Sure.
Or helping them buy it, whatever the
Right.
case may be. But they're teaching their kids. So financial literacy ultimately is up to you. It is up to you to teach your children financial literacy. It was up to your parents to teach you the financial literacy. And now it's up to you to step back from what your parents taught you. And it's a little easier to do when you do maybe get married or have a relationship with somebody or living with somebody or whatever, who you have to start discussing those things.
Right.
But it's so easy to live in a vacuum if
If it's just you.
it's just you,
Yeah.
or if you happen to marry somebody who did things exactly. I mean, you and I have such similar backgrounds
Right.
that there's probably a ton of financial stuff that we were both taught together
Right.
simultaneously
So
in
we
the
think it's
80s.
the best way because it's the only way you
Yeah.
know and the only way I know.
But we try really hard to reevaluate everything and be, I think we're less conservative than my parents were
Yeah.
as far as spending money. Like I think that we let some of it go easier
Yeah.
than
Well, like the trips and stuff. I mean,
mhm,
we're willing to take trips that cost money.
or stay in a hotel. Like
Right.
my parents absolutely were not going to stay in a hotel ever. We
Yeah.
stayed in one hotel one time, and it was in Dallas. It was the Harvey Hotel. I don't even know if it still exists, but this again, as infrequently as it happened, I remember it
Right.
very distinctly. It had a pool. My dad was on a business trip. Like we weren't paying for it, and so we were all packed in that room and staying in this place, and it was the greatest thing ever. But generally, they would never have done that. And now I'm like, put me in a hotel room ASAP.
Yeah.
I will not camp. Won't do it.
Well, we stayed in hotels, but we would always our summer vacations were always to go visit family.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have that I ever remember like we're taking a trip to this location.
Yeah.
So our vacations a lot of times we would get in the car and drive
1,000
hours.
miles.
Yes. And so you had to stay in a hotel. We drove from San Francisco to Baton Rouge.
I would beg to argue on that one that Cannons would have been staying in a camping place, camping spot.
Yeah,
No, could have
that's true.
camped.
We could have camped. Could have camped. But we would stay at a hotel. And that's
It's so miserable. Every time, look, I have such. I mean, I'm not going to call it childhood trauma. I think it's just. I think most of my family still would be fine camping. It's just how I interpreted the camping situation. I have camped enough.
Here's the thing though, camping's not free.
No, it's actually
You have
not
to pay
all that
for a
cheap.
campsite,
Yeah.
and then you have to pay for a tent. I mean, I guess that's a one-time purchase, but all the stuff at the campsite that you would need, sleeping bags, and I don't know.
What
I mean,
are you getting at here?
how much cheaper is that than just getting a hotel for
17
100?
people. That
We
had to-
only had one hotel room.
Yeah, right. You weren't going to get two.
It
for
was
sure.
one hotel room, and there were 9 people sleeping in it.
Oh my lord.
So
I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is I don't
it
go
couldn't have
camp.
been that much cheaper. And at least you find, I remember, trying to think of the name of the company that would make the road maps. Anyway, they would come with these little hotel guides.
Yeah. Or camping
And there
guides in
were-
our case.
There were 2 things that we always looked for in the hotel guide.
A pool.
Swimming pool was always number 1.
Mhm. What was the other one? Free breakfast.
Free breakfast was
Yes.
number 2.
Yes.
Those are always, so we'd be looking through that thing, and my dad, no, I think we're going to stop in about 100 miles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all start scouting out hotels, and we'd be scouring through that.
You guys
thing.
didn't even schedule them in advance or anything.
No,
you just
because you
showed
didn't know
up
how
there.
far you didn't know how far you'd get in your
Oh,
10 to 12 hour drive.
very different from how we scheduled. Yeah, and my mom and dad scheduled. They took the AAA guide.
Yeah.
So AAA has guides or had them for every portion of the United States. So my parents would choose like the Northeast coast, or we went up to Arkansas one. Anyway, they would choose an area of the United States, and that was like our destination.
Yeah.
And then they would choose places all the way along to get there and to get back to where you would stop along the way at all these different places. And maybe that was partially the lack of hotel or the veering toward camping was we were we were going to some pretty desolate places. We went to a lot of battlefields. We went to the Grand Canyon. I mean, how many hotels are there around the Grand Canyon?
There can't be
I have
many.
no idea. And so, we drove all anyway. They would take the AAA guide that was of that area, and they would find all the campsites, all the tourist attractions, all the different things, and they would map them all out. So we knew from where we stayed last night to like you had a destination the next day,
Yeah.
and you had a plan for what you were going to do when you got there, what you were going to see. I mean, she had it all planned out for sure. I did not get that gene whatsoever. I have zero interest in planning the nuances of a vacation.
Yeah, we did not. As I remember, first of all, I looked it up. It's Rand McNally is the name of the road atlas company
yes.
we used. Anyway.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, the Rand McNally. Yes, I'm very familiar with the Rand McNally.
anyway, we would, as I remember, they knew approximately how far you could get into 10 to 12 hours.
Sure. That's an easy math calculation. but
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, but that's going to put you, are we going to get, let's say you leave California. I want to say our first stop was always somewhere near the California-Arizona line. Now, did you make it all the way to Arizona? Are you a little bit before? You're still in California, depending on the
Sure.
traffic in LA.
Sure.
Things like those things you can't predict. So
Sure.
they knew generally where we were
I'm
gonna
pretty
stop,
sure
and
my
so when you
mom
got
knew
close,
every rest stop we were going to stay, not stay at, but go to the bathroom at, every welcome center, every.
right?
I felt
Did
very.
she have a Rand McNally
I'm sure she
atlas?
did. I'm telling you, we had the fold out maps. We did not get an actual
No, we
atlas
got
for a
the
very long
book, man.
time.
We had this thing. This book was
I know. Those were the later days.
24 by 36. I mean, this thing was a huge book,
Did it
and we
have the
would get our little
entire?
compass out, and you could measure. That's where I learned a lot of how to
I
do
just
that kind of
know
stuff.
in 30 years from now, people are going to be like, what was the name of that thing? It'll be like Google.com was what we used, people.
MapQuest.
Yeah, so definitely doing things different in that department, than from my parents. And then, of course, things change over time, too. There's better opportunities that come along. Every family's different. But I think we always have your basis of your mind in where you came from and what your parents raised you. And I just think that we always have to have an open mind to challenge what that was, why it was that way, and does it work for us now?
Yeah. Is that the best? Is what you've experienced the best way to do it?
And sometimes you
And
can't do the best, like ideally
sure.
XYZ.
Sure. I mean, really the best for you. It's relative to
It's all
whatever your
relative,
situation
yes.
is, and your situation may be better or worse than what your parents' situation was. For example, we don't have 6 and 7 kids.
Right, we have 4.
We have 4. So
A mere 4.
well, but that makes a big difference
Mhm.
in when we travel across the country if we want to stop at a hotel versus a campsite or buying a drum set for our kid.
Right. By the way, that was another thing. What'd you guys do for food along the way when you guys would travel?
We had this giant cooler that
Yes!
sat between the 2 front
Yes!
seats.
Us too. My mom would
It
pack
had
sandwiches.
bread,
Mm-hmm.
cold cuts.
Uh-huh.
As my mom would always cut.
The old cold cuts.
We got some cold cuts. You had the mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, cheese. All the essentials were in
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, but y'all had to make the sandwiches in
She
the
made them.
car.
She made them and passed them back
Oh yeah.
in the front seat. Who wants turkey? We got turkey first. Who wants turkey?
Oh, memories. I think my mom would pack the sandwiches, like pre-make them. I
No.
swear all my mom did during those vacations was cook. That was it. She'd get up in the morning, have her Coleman camp stove out, and make like full breakfast.
Well, that's why you hit that Holiday Inn. It has that continental breakfast.
I have to say, that's how I would vary even from how your parents did it, is that now you can forget about me staying in anywhere probably that has a continental breakfast. Have you noticed that, by the way?
Yes, I have. Found out this past weekend. We went to that wedding. You're like, no, that place is junk.
Well, do you want to tell that story? You want to veer on into that land?
So we went to a wedding this weekend, and Catherine puts me in charge of. I don't know. You put me in charge of it. I just decided I'll book the hotel for us.
It was it was about 3 or 4 weeks out from the wedding, and we knew that the odds of us being able to get a hotel close to the wedding, we wanted to be close.
Right. So that's how I did it. I looked up where the where the thing was. I tried to get us to stay at the hotel where they were having the wedding. That would have
Right,
been
it
the
was all
easiest thing,
booked.
but it was booked. And then from there was a couple close, and then it went out further from there.
I remember when you were booking it, I was sitting right across from you, and you said, "I'm going to book the hotel." Somehow my brain heard bed and breakfast, and
It was not a bed and breakfast.
Oh, I know that now. And I do remember you saying we can't get in the hotel where the wedding is.
Right.
And I think now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm pretty sure that I assumed, since we were talking about staying at the caliber of hotel that the wedding was going to be at.
Hotel, yeah.
It was a nice hotel. So I figured you're going to book also a nice hotel just within proximity of this place.
It's not what happened. I picked one that was going to be relatively cheap. That was close.
I didn't know any of that. I didn't know how. I thought you said you paid $150 for it, and you were like freaking out about the price. And I was
like $98 or something.
Okay. I vaguely remember you worried about how much we were going to pay, and I was like, "It's fine. I just want to stay at a nice hotel." So you booked it.
Yeah.
And the day that we went to the wedding was a Saturday, and we got to the city. And we did some shopping because I literally didn't. I mean, you talk about bad planning. I didn't bring anything to wear to the wedding. And so we were kind of going shopping for some things, and we actually showed up to the hotel a little later than check-in time. Check-in's at 3. We showed up about 3:30, and I was guiding you GPS to no Atlas, by the way, no Rand
No.
McNally.
If we had the Rand McNally, I would have been
If
fine.
only. And so I was guiding you into the hotel, and I'm looking at my phone, and we park in the front of the hotel, and I look up from my phone, and I just go, nope.
Okay, what was funny is we were driving down the road, and you're like, all right, it's the next right. And I look, and I was like, it better not be the next. Like, in my mind, I'm like, that's not a great-looking hotel.
Were you really worried about it? Because I think that
I
you would have
thought it was-
100% gotten out of that car.
I would have, because to me, you're just like, oh, well, I mean, I thought I picked a good one. This one looks like it's not so great, but
Looks like we could catch a bed bug. It's fine.
yeah, I mean, but I remember pulling up like, nah, we could have done better than this. We
So,
just kind of pulled in.
All I said was, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Not staying here. And you looked at me and go, I'm so glad I got the cancellation policy. You're like, I just knew something was going to happen.
So here's the thing. I never, ever, ever, ever used to get that. But I want to say the last 2 times that we've gotten hotels, for whatever reason, we've had reasons to think that we weren't going to stay there. Kind of like a last minute, something comes up, and I don't know. So when I was booking this one, I was like, you know what? It's a wedding. It's in a city that we don't know people. Something could come up and we might not go. And
Or I
so
wonder
I
if
was
you
like,
thought we
I'll
could-
just,
We could drive back to Baton Rouge that night or something.
yeah, I mean, I forget what the circumstances were.
I didn't know
Well,
you had to
you
pay
know.
extra for a hotel cancellation. I thought you could just
It's
cancel
like
for
10,
free anytime.
no, it's like 10 or 15 bucks.
Okay.
I mean, it's not killer to
So
do
we're
it.
sitting in the parking lot of the hotel, and Thomas says, well, then find another hotel. So I'm looking for other hotels. I find the other hotel. We cancel. You walked into the hotel to cancel it.
Yeah, and they
and
were
then-
cool with it. They were like,
You
you here to check in? I said, no, I need to cancel. They're like, oh, okay. Let me just do
I will
this.
happily.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Anyway, so then we drove, and the other hotel wasn't that far away, but it was brand new and it was very nice.
Yeah.
And we are bed bug free and good to go. And we had a great time
But
at
it
the
didn't
wedding.
have a free breakfast. I bet the place that I booked had a free
Oh,
breakfast.
100%. But I'm starting to see that consistency that
Although I didn't see you when I went in
the
lobby.
last place I
didn't-
stayed with my friend in Ocean Springs, it was a boutique hotel. Also did not have a bed and breakfast. I mean,
Yeah.
did not have a continental breakfast. I mean, I'm fine with
So
it.
we stay in hotels for football a couple times a year, usually. We usually travel in the summer for our 7-on-7 tournaments, and we usually stay in some La Quintas,
Mm-hmm.
which they're not super nice. They're not terrible, but they do have the breakfast, which I think is why we do it.
I'm sure you don't want. It's a one meal y'all don't have to pay for.
Right. And then for the state championship games, we have to stay in the hotel that the state makes us stay in, and they are nice.
Yeah, real nice. So that's our conversation about teaching your children about finances, about needs versus wants, all the things, and determining how what you were taught as a child, how you should like rethink of it just for a second, if not long term, about how you'll teach your children about financial literacy and all the other things that are your responsibility as parents. It's important stuff, you guys. Step outside yourself, step outside what your experiences are, and try to think step by step to make sure it's the right thing for those little adults that you're raising out there. If you guys have any questions or comments, you guys can email us at buildingaaronsburg@gmail.com. You can contact us on Facebook and on Instagram at buildingaaronsburg. And until next time, bye y'all.
Bye, y'all.